The northern tip of the ridge known as Castle Bank towers high above Gilwern Common, close to the modern road. Visible from the road is a horizontal line of grey scree surrounding its highest point. This marks the bank surrounding the Hillfort. The overall shape of the ridge is clear from above. In total, it is around 1 mile long and split into 2 sections by a dividing saddle. It is the northernmost section which concerns us here, as the site of an impressive Iron Age hill fort. Making full use of the natural shape of the hill fort fills the top of the ridge. The steepest side of the ridge is to the east, with a natural scree fall at its base below the exposed rocky outcrops which define this side of the hill. Looking along the ridge shows the more gently sloped, bracken-covered western slope. Gilwern Common is in the background. The site is complex, with a mix of natural and man-made features which must have developed over time. No archaeological excavations have ever been undertaken of the Hillfort, and no datable finds ever recorded. Only the marks left in the landscape by people who lived here before the Romans arrived remain as clues. This simplified image of the Hillfort illustrates its main features. Bounding banks of the Hillfort define the 2 areas of the main fort, here marked by a red and a brown line. A further area to the south, often termed an annex, is shown by the blue line. The banks appear to show a development in possibly 3 phases, although phase 2 and the annex could have been constructed at the same time. There are 2 gateways into the main areas, one at the northern end, into what appears to be the earliest phase, and another at the southern end, into the second phase. The scree-covered banks of the northern gateway are visible from the modern road. It is likely that all the stones used in building this entrance, and indeed all other stony features of the Hillfort, were carried from the scree falls at the base of the western side of the ridge. There is no natural source of such stone at the top of the ridge. On closer inspection, the gateway reveals itself as being made up of 2 parallel banks. These would have increased both the entrance defences and also have a dominating impact over the common and anyone travelling along what may have been an important route way, as far back as the Bronze Age, and is now the line of a modern road. A much later, probably medieval, earth and stone bank cuts across the Hillfort just behind the Iron Age entrance, one end terminating at the eastern Hillfort bank, which it meets at a narrow angle. After cutting through the Iron Age defences to the west, it continues down the slope and can be traced for several miles around the common. The highest point of the site is pockmarked by platforms. Huts or dwellings probably once stood on these much eroded platforms. From ground level, these are difficult to see. Platforms within hillforts are rare. Indeed, a fairly recent archaeological account found it exceptional that at least 8 could be found within the Castle Bank Hillfort. However, many more can be identified from the air, while our photogrammetric survey has identified at least 40. All the platforms are similar in size except for what may be a slightly larger platform on the top, very close to the highest point. On the assumption that the platforms equate to dwellings, it would suggest a significant community once lived within this hill fort. Deviations in direction in the outer bank on each side of the hill fort mark the Phase 2 extension. The kink on the western boundary is the most obvious. The line of the Phase 1 boundary, now within the fort interior, makes use of the natural rock outcrop and includes a concentration of scree. This might once have been part of a southern entrance to Phase 1. The fact that this area of stones is still in place today and was not reused by the Hillfort builders suggests that this structure continued in existence after the construction of the Phase 2 extension. Like other patches of scree, this now shows evidence of a much later hole, made to give shelter to medieval herdsmen or farmers on this exposed ridge. No platforms are visible in the Phase 2 area. The western bank of this area is the most substantial to be found anywhere on this site, and leads to what must have been, to judge from the remains, a very impressive gateway. Unfortunately, the shape and form of this gateway cannot be determined from the disturbed visible remains. Overlooked by this gateway is the Phase 3 annex. Its purpose is obscure, as its boundary bank does not fully enclose the area, so allowing free access to its interior. This seems deliberate, rather than the result of an incomplete, interrupted construction, and is in marked contrast to the fully enclosed and gated main areas of the Hillfort. Its western bank, like that of the rest of the site, is much more prominent than that on the eastern side, where it follows the edge of the precipitous rock face. By clever use of the natural slope, the western bank appears slight from the inside, but presents a significant barrier from the outside. This bank allows a large opening to the interior, albeit under the eyes of the looming gateway. What is clear is that the approach to the southern gateway requires passing alongside the western bank of the annex, with, ahead, the gateway and successive barriers, natural and man-made, looming one behind the other. This would have been impressive, and a visible manifestation of the power of the community who lived there. However, little is known with certainty about the origins and development of Castlebank Hillfort and the people who built it. This short video, using drone photography and photogrammetry, can only provide a brief summary of what is visible there now. Even basic questions about when it was built cannot be answered. It is described as Iron Age, referring broadly to the 800 or so years before the Romans. However, it is on Gilwern Common, which is littered with Bronze Age features: burial cairns, standing stones and stone rows. Does this suggest an earlier origin? The presumed size of the community living within the Hillfort suggests some common purpose and organisation. Agriculture alone is unlikely, as that is best done with a spread of smaller farmsteads, close to the farmed land. Was the proximity to a trade route significant, providing an economic rationale? In this context, could the annex have provided the controlled location of, say, the Iron Age equivalent of an annual fair, feasting, or a cattle market? The very names applied to this and similar structures, Hillfort, defended settlement, carry implications of military purpose. If so, who constituted that threat? It is too impressive a structure just to fend off cattle thieves. These questions, and many more applicable to the Iron Age generally, cannot be answered by photography alone, and may never be answered with certainty. For now, we can only speculate, admire, and enjoy the impressive remains left in the landscape by people who lived here more than 2,000 years ago.